to have an HOA or to not have an HOA, specifically in Colorado Springs, because there is a lot of information we need to educate you guys on, because if you pick one or the other, you might pick wrong. So stay tuned for the entire video so you can figure out all the pros and cons of having an HOA in Colorado Springs.
So I think that there's a ton of pros, a ton of cons to pretty much anything in life. But when we are talking about HOAs, I think it's important to kind of go over some of the things that kind of looks like. For me, I know that, we've lived in HOA houses, in houses that have had an HOA. We've lived in houses that have not had an HOA. And I think for me, one of the things that I absolutely love is that being in an HOA, the aesthetics of the community is always on point. Now, you're always going to have people that don't care, and the HOA, the good thing, another pro with having an HOA is that they do enforce it 9 times out of 10. The bad thing is that an HOA can only do so much with that. And so if you have a neighbor that has not mowed their lawn or has not taken care of their plants and it's dying and they're letting it go, you can best believe that they've gotten several different notices on it to try to fix it. But then also, if they get so many notices, then they get fined. And then they get fined again, and then they get fined again. And if they don't fix it and or pay it, then they get a lien on their house. And so for me to have the comfort of knowing that our neighborhood is aesthetically nice and people care about their stuff and not 50 million cars that are broken down, don't have license plates, busted out windows, that to me is worth, that's one of the biggest pros, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. It can be a nuisance sometimes. For example, we'll put our trash cans out on Monday morning. They get picked up sometime on Monday, usually in the afternoon. And occasionally I won't bring them home or to the garage or to the backyard on that same day. And believe it or not, the HOA people are out and they send a notice in the mail, hey, you're leaving your trash cans out. And it's just more of a nuisance than anything, which it's going to happen in every community, and it's going to be strange things. The other day we had a notice because we were parked too close to a stop sign. So they left a little notice on our window that we were parked too close to a stop sign, even though we were only there for a few minutes. So it just happens to be random timing. But yes, the overall aesthetics of the community or neighborhood is definitely a pro. And you can notice it because when you go to a community without an HOA, there's just not nearly as much upkeep. So if you are someone who doesn't want to have to deal with a potential eyesore, not saying it's always the case, but I would definitely recommend looking into communities with an HOA because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be just better maintained.
Yeah. And I think this one's probably going to be a pro and a con. It just depends on what you're looking for. But I like the fact that we have rules and regulations that we have to obey by. Now, I also think that that's a con because I don't want someone telling me that I can't paint my house white and black.
Right.
And normally when you're in an HOA, they have rules and regulations that you can't just do that. And especially now, even to kind of back up, there's a huge difference between so many different HOAs. So the biggest thing that we recommend is always, always, always to pull the HOA docs. And if you are using us, we make sure that you get them. It's up to you as a buyer to do their due diligence to make sure that you're comfortable with the HOA and what they're going to expect from you. Because what could be important to us or not be important to us may be really important to you. And so it is your job to kind of go through that, make sure that you're comfortable with it all. But going into it, what you're allowed to do and not do, right?
Yeah, we just recently had a buyer actually that was looking for an ADU, or basically a mother-in-law suite. But the tricky part with her is that she was looking in areas that didn't allow that. There are some rules changing in the Colorado Springs area, which is why it's always important to have an agent represent you the right way and make sure that you have access to these documents to verify that what you're looking for is actually what you can do. She actually went a different route and didn't go for an ADU because they are area specific here in Colorado Springs. So if that's something that you're looking for, be sure to reach out to us so that we can point you in the right direction. You can always reach us at 719-238-1771. But we'll definitely point you in the right direction with that. That one's pretty particular, but I agree with the rules and regulations. Sometimes it's a pro, sometimes it's a con. It really just depends on what you're looking to do in that community specifically. If you have toys, which Colorado Springs, we have all the seasons, right? So sometimes you acquire all these things.
Motorcycle, sports car, boat, jet ski.
You name it. Whatever
bike.
Whatever your toys are, if you're in an HOA, you might not be able to just let that stuff sit out, and you might not have room in your garage. So think about what you're going to be doing with your home, with your lot, with your land, your garage, etc. And really determine, do you need the extra space? Maybe an area without an HOA would be better, or are you going to be able to get it all in basically like sight unseen, or are you allowed to have it on the streets or in the driveway or whatever that looks like?
Yeah, because it can look like each HOA is going to be completely different.
Yeah.
And one of the other things, I had said I really want to paint our house black and white, you guys, but we can't because they have color grids in our community to where we can't have the same house, the same paint colors within so many houses away. But anyway, I also like the fact that my neighbor cannot just paint their house like hot pink.
Right.
So because that kind of stuff does play into, we're your local real estate agent, so we're going to tell you a little bit of real estate knowledge too. That stuff does play a part into resale value. You go and, you're trying to sell a house and your neighbor doesn't take care of it. There's trash everywhere. The weeds are up to, your knees. And then your other neighbor has a hot pink house, and then you have a pristine house.
Stop it. Get some help.
It's going to be a little bit harder for you to get top dollar for something like that, and it sell.
Yeah.
So I like living in an HOA.
Yeah. If I could find the magical place with no HOA where I had the best neighbors and nobody had crazy things and everyone was just happy, then I would choose no HOA. But you cannot find and you can't pick your neighbors. And we have seen it several times. We'll have buyers, they'll want to go see a house in a community without an HOA. The house is amazing. And then you look across the street and to your right and to your left, and it's like, yeah, no shot would I ever live in this house. If I could pick it up and move it 2 miles, then of course. But yeah, sometimes when you're not in the HOAs, your neighbors can get away with a lot of things. And that's the other thing to remember too. Maybe when you first move into a community, it's pristine, it's great, it's nice, but then you have 3, 4, 5 neighbors move. You can't control who's coming into the community. So if they just decide to do whatever they want to do and it doesn't align with what you would choose to do in that community, you really don't have a say-so.
No. And I think too, like there's certain things, we had a client who, he's a mechanic. And so he works on cars all the time. And so he was very, very adamant. I do not want an HOA. Like, that's not my cup of tea. That's not what I want. And so you're able to find exactly what you're wanting without an HOA. And now he can work on cars without getting a notice. You do that here where we live in Meridian Ranch, you would have probably like 5 or 6 complaints on you within a week.
Yep.
But pros and cons, right? It's one of those things to where an HOA kind of does restrict you from things, but then aesthetically it's going to be pretty pristine. But then you're not going to be able to do what you may need to do or you may want to do. And I think that's a big thing.
I would say another pro with the HOAs, which is not every single HOA, but it is quite a few of them, is that you're going to have usually I would say a little bit more consistency with events and with a community center of some sort. For example, the community that we live in, we have events all the time. We've told you guys that a dozen times. But with the community center, you have a gym, you have an indoor pool, an outdoor pool, a hot tub, childcare. There's a ton of stuff to do.
Yeah. I think exactly what you said, Sean, that with an HOA, they do kind of carry a law of, they take those HOA dues and they do dump them back into the community. And so you're able to have more of rec centers or community centers, more parks that they will maintain.
Yep.
And so I think that that could be a pro for sure.
With that being said, a potential con to that is the dollars. You don't really have control on if the HOAs go up in price year over year. And some communities are strange. They're like $30 a month, but you don't really get anything. Other communities can be $300, or I think even the most expensive one we've seen recently is like, what, $750 a month?
Yeah.
So the prices are going to range drastically, and that is obviously going to play a factor into your mortgage payment. So take
it even into account the high-rise condo.
Yeah.
That HOA due was almost $2,000. I mean, it was a penthouse. It was, it was up on top of, you can oversee all of downtown.
20th
so
floor.
But that's the thing. That's the crazy thing about HOAs is that they can literally be as cheap as, $35 is like the cheapest that I've seen a month. Those don't really include anything. They basically charge that for more of a covenants type thing, to where they want to kind of have rules but not really enforce any rules. And then you get into the higher HOAs, and they're going to include different things. Meridian Ranches is around $220 a month, but that includes water, all of your inside water, which a lot of HOAs do not do that on a single family home. And then it also includes, like Sean said, the rec centers, the fields, the course. I mean, it includes so much stuff.
Specific areas will even give you like your trash. Not that trash is super expensive, but it all adds up. So it's definitely something to consider. And then like she said too, the parks alone, like if you're in an area without actually this morning we were with a buyer and they were looking at this house. Out the backyard is a humongous park, a baseball diamond. Like if you have a family, that's a great location for you. If you have a family and you're not close to a park and you're in an area without an HOA, they're not going to have parks to maintain and like keep nice for you that are close by.
Those will be most like city parks, right? So then the city is responsible for it. And I will say that Colorado Springs, their park and rec center is pretty amazing. They do a really good job with maintaining the parks, but it's just a different feel.
Well, but then you're probably having to drive. Right now, if I walked out my front door, I could be at a park in less than 5 minutes walking distance. Anywhere in this community, you're probably less than 5 minutes walking distance from a park because there's just so many of them. And I would say that that's consistent with most communities with an HOA. There's usually going to be parks. Some of them aren't extravagant. Some of them are just a field. Others have swings and merry-go-rounds. We actually have one right up the street here that's like a walking trail, but it has body weight workout equipment. So it has like this leg press that you can do and pull-up bars, and there's parallel bars to do dips, and that one actually even has a slide, and that one's pretty nifty. And then up the street, it's driving distance, but there's one with a giant field where you can play soccer or football. And then they have pickleball courts on that same exact area. So that one's a really neat one too.
Yeah. The other thing too, when it comes to the cost differences, a lot of times the higher HOAs are going to be more in your townhome or condo associations. And 9 times out of 10, why they are higher is because they include more than just your community. They'll include, like we have a small little 2-bedroom condo going live this week, and their HOA is a little pricey, but it includes all utilities. So it includes the water, it includes electric, gas, everything, to where all you really have is your monthly mortgage payment and then your HOA dues, which is really nice for more of that retiree and or first-time home buyer, where it's like you don't have a lot of income at that point, and it's nice just to have like 2 bills. That's it.
Well, and you brought up another great point is maintenance. Like some of these HOAs, they do snow removal, they do obviously the trash, they can maintain your lawn sometimes. It just depends on which community that you're going in. But if you're looking for low maintenance and you don't want to have to worry about maintaining the yard, you don't have it zero-scaped though, so you want somebody else to be able to come in and do it. That's another great thing to keep in mind. If you're looking for minimal maintenance, then sometimes an HOA, because obviously if you're not in an HOA and you don't maintain your lawn and it's not zero-scaped, you're going to be the neighbor that people may dislike just a little bit because your yard's looking a little funked up. So something to keep in mind.
And it also, like, it happens so fast. And so it's like, I hate yard work, you guys. Like, one of my girlfriends just posted on social media about how they love to mow a lawn. And it's like, I do not like to do that. I don't like to do anything. I'm not like the plant flowers and plant a garden. That's just not, I've never been into that. So like for me, I would rather pay a monthly HOA or a monthly service so that way I don't have to worry about any of that. And that's kind of the pros about the HOA is that those higher end ones will include a lot of that stuff. So But the most important thing is you have to do your own research. You have to make sure that you're comfortable with all that.
One of the things I will warn you guys about, when we were in Banning, in the specific part of Banning that we lived in, they did snow removal up to your door, which sounds amazing until 3:30 in the morning rolls around and you hear the trucks and the crews of 10 to 20 people, and they are out there scraping and scraping and throwing snow. And it started at 3:30 in the morning. And I'm an early person, but the first time that happened, I was pretty irritated.
Yeah.
So again, these are just things that you as a buyer need to look into to weigh your options, pros and cons of having them. Because I think we both can agree that we would rather have an HOA.
Yeah.
But there are certain things and certain HOAs that I would say, absolutely not. I don't want that ever again.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of... Another thing too with HOAs that I think is a big downside is some of them will restrict your animal breeds.
Ooh, that's a true one. And we just had this video on how Colorado's pet friendly.
Yeah.
But there are certain, that's a really good one.
Yeah, there are certain HOAs that won't allow you to have certain breeds in the community, which I think that's going too far. I love that HOAs can kind of protect the outside of our community, but what I do in my own home, like inside of my home, I'm like, it's none of your darn business.
Right. And that could be limited to like 2 cats or 2 dogs or specific breeds of cats and dogs, or even sometimes it gets weird and people want birds or iguanas, or maybe they want a pet flamingo and they say in that neighborhood that that's not allowed. Right. So again,
in a lot of neighborhoods you can't have chickens. I know in Meridian you can't in Banning.
I was showing, this just reminded me. I was showing some buyers in Fountains in a non-HOA community.
Very non-HOA.
And we go to the backyard, and it's one of those areas where it's like,
you're not going to believe us, but we have video that we could share.
Oh yeah, the backyard that we were in was fairly decent for a non-HOA. And I look to the right and I'm like, man, there's just, it's a little tore up. And then I hear these sounds out of nowhere. This goat jumps up onto, I think like a makeshift shed, and is staring over the fence. Whatever goat noises are. That's hilarious. And my buyers were totally tripped out. We didn't know if it was a super pro to the house or a con. They were very confused. But the neighbor did indeed have goats.
Yep. And that's
it's not a farm area. It's not like Peyton. Like Peyton, I would be like,
it's not out in the country, or there's not a farm. It's just it's a residential area with
normal community with goats.
But that's probably like the craziest animal creature that, well, aside from like bears and deer and stuff like that, but I think those are more nature stuff. Nobody has like a deer in their backyard that lives there. But when that goes,
surprised.
That goat is pretty darn funny. But anyway, so I think that there's definitely a ton of pros and cons, but some other things that we kind of wanted to talk to you guys about too is kind of what is an HOA, and then, which it's going to be basically, I don't really know like the legal definition of what an HOA is, but it's basically going to be where they have a board. That board can consist of members from the community. And each board member has certain roles in it, and they have to they have to do budgets, they basically have to run it like a business. And there's certain requirements. They have to legally be able to uphold certain different things. Anything that's voted in or anything that changes has to be kind of done with a vote, and the majority wins. They have to give you as a homeowner notice of any changes when it happens.
So if you're that type of person that wants a little bit more control and say so in what's happening, and
join the board.
Might be a good idea to join.
Or even just go to the meetings. Like every single HOA, for the most part, unless it's an HOA that just has covenants and it's not enforced. Our house that we're selling in kind of like the Black Forest area, they have a very loose HOA. It has not been enforced for years. So really for it to be enforced, because they don't have an HOA board anymore. So in order for that to be picked back up and then enforced, they basically would have to start all over. But you can go to all of their meetings. Normally they'll meet once a month, if not once a quarter, and they welcome the residents to go in there and see. And I would even recommend that if you're thinking about purchasing somewhere and you want to see how crazy or get feedback on their HOA, go to a board meeting. You'll get a very good glimpse of the craziness and or the non-craziness of what that HOA looks like.
Right. Well, and another thing too is when you get involved in an HOA community, you probably want to make sure that they're financially stable and that there's not any sort of lawsuits, which actually we just recently experienced one with one of the townhome. It was a townhome or condo?
Yeah, it was a townhome. And so, this is to kind of like back up a little bit, but when you are looking in a home, if there is an HOA or covenants, you do get copies of those. You get the bylaws, you get the budget, you get the financial docs, you get all of their meetings for the last year. And we have an amazing team, Miss Donna. She helps us with a lot of that stuff, but she'll request them. We'll get them from the seller. We'll do whatever it takes so that way you guys have the appropriate documents and can kind of go over there. But during that time period, we did find out that the townhome they did have a lawsuit going on. It's important to know that kind of information so you know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it could be impactful towards you. It could not be impactful towards you. You could care, you could not care. It obviously just depends on the situation and how substantial it is and what's going on, but definitely just something that you're going to want to
just pay attention to. Yeah. The other thing too that kind of pops back a lot is special assessments. Special assessments are a little tricky because basically when you have an HOA, they have the right to be able to put what's called a special assessment. This happens a lot in condos and townhomes, right? Let's say that there's a huge hailstorm, the roofs get completely demolished. The HOA insurance is covered on your exterior. But if they have to replace everybody's roof at the same amount of time, their premiums are going to be crazy. And that's not budgeted, right? And so they will do what's called a special assessment. And they'll say, hey, residents, this is how much the bill's going to be. We have to raise the dues up every single month forever, or we can just take lump sums for like 3 months of $350. I'm just giving you guys hypothetical numbers, right? $350 for the next 3 months, and then that will take care of that special assessment. Roofs are really big on it, siding, stucco, that kind of stuff. The pool, if they have to like redo the whole entire pool in the community, that could be a special assessment. There's a million different reasons why an HOA can pull a special assessment. They also have to have the community's backing on it. So they have to notify you of what the amount is, what the terms are going to be, what they expect from you. And then the community has to vote that in.
Well, and sometimes as buyers too, these things that we're referring to, not just necessarily special assessments, but it can affect your ability to actually purchase the townhome or condo specifically. So if you have a specific loan type, that lender might say, no shot, we can't allow you to purchase this type of a home because their insurance isn't enough, or there's several other different factors. But again, another reason that if you're looking at purchasing a condo or a townhome and you're curious about the buying process or you need representation, reach out to us. Obviously, this is what we do, and we are very familiar with the different areas. And we have great lending partners if that's something that you need help with too. But we have seen some people get tripped up by that. They get super excited and then ultimately heartbroken because what they thought was going to be their dream home or townhome or condo just didn't end up working out and they had to go to another area. So something to pay attention to.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is when you go to purchase a house that's in an HOA, because like I had said at the beginning of our video, is what happens if the house that you're buying, those people didn't take care of their lawn and they didn't take care of their stuff. And then they don't have the trees. Or they don't have the 12 particular trees that you need in your front yard, right? And they've been given their notices, they've been given their fines, but they haven't done anything about it. Before that person can sell that home, they have to make that compliant. And or you have to know that they're not compliant, and you as a buyer would have to pay that up. We're really good agents. We can help you with all of that stuff and navigate through that. And we will, I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but 99.9%. I don't think as of today we have not had it where our buyers have had to pay for that. But we would get the sellers to take care of that and make sure that you're good. And also, a lot of times if they're that far into the process, they have a lien on the house, and that has to be cleared up before it can be passed on to you. So
another thing, which actually someone commented on our channel about, is that they wanted to be in an area where they can play their drums. Sound ordinance is sometimes a thing.
Yep.
So if you're in an HOA community and you want to play your drums like this gentleman wanted to when he moves to Colorado Springs, you're probably going to want to look into that, because
HOA.
that was something that I haven't thought about in honestly several years until he commented and said that he wanted to play the drums. Like, It's like, oh yeah, that's something that you definitely need to consider, because we have seen it happen. So again, if you're not in an HOA and you want to play your drums till midnight, go for it. If you are in an HOA, you're going to want to check the rules on it.
Yep.
So, do you want to live in an HOA or not live in an HOA? Let us know in the comments below. We're always curious what your guys' thought process is.
Are you pro
or con HOAs? But I really do think that it just depends on the person. There are pros and cons to both in our opinions. And like I said, if I could pick the perfect community where everybody was just like me and wanted to do everything the same way, then
Sean lives in his own little fairy tale world, you guys.
I would go no HOA. But the reality of that is slim to none, and you can never control the future. You don't know what your neighbors are going to be doing. So I choose HOA, even though I don't want to be on Team HOA.
Yeah, I'm definitely Team HOA. I just wish that we could have like a good middle ground, which there are communities out there that you can kind of be able to do whatever you want, yet they still enforce certain things. But it's such a mixed bag of it. But I am totally for HOAs.
Yep. So as always, we will see you in the next video. Leave your thoughts and comments below. And if you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of us, 719-238-1771.